We're here today to discuss an important and timely topic, opportunities to reform a nation's environmental review and permitting processes in a way that supports our transition to a clean energy economy and the good-paying jobs that come with it. And as we look for new opportunities, it's also helpful to understand what we've already accomplished, and it's actually quite a bit. Over the past 2 years, Congress, and this committee in particular, have been incredibly productive. That includes passing a once-in-a-generation investment to help rebuild our infrastructure, our roads, our highways, our bridges, our water systems, our water sanitation systems, ports, infrastructure, all kinds of access to the internet, you name it. We've done a lot of stuff, and I'm very, very proud of it. I know Senator Capito is as well. We've also made the largest investment ever in to combat climate change. Much of the work that we've done has been bipartisan. I'm proud to say it was led by this committee. Now we need to work to implement these laws without delay, and that's our intent. Why is it important that we move without delay? And as many of our colleagues know, and those that might be tuned in, watching us or listening, know that a recent report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change found that our planet is currently on a path to reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius in global warming within the next decade, a critical tipping point in our ability to address climate change. Fortunately, we've made significant progress in supporting clean energy projects across our country and improving the permitting process without undermining bedrock environmental protections. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, we made the Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Council permanent. We expanded its authority to reduce permitting timelines for large infrastructure projects. Doing so will reduce the time that it takes to build critical infrastructure. In the Inflation Reduction Act, we provided $1 billion to the federal agencies tasked with completing these reviews and permits. These additional resources will address longstanding agency challenges and help expedite timelines. We know that these tools will make a difference. For example, the Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Council improves efficiency through better communications, better coordination, and dispute resolution. And importantly, it does so without undermining or altering any statutory or regulatory requirements. This early coordination makes a clear difference in timelines. Between 2010 and 2018, the average time across all agencies for a project to complete environmental impact statement was 4.5 years. In contrast, the average time for projects that went through the FAST 41 process was 2.5 years. From 4.5 years to 2.5 years under FAST 41. There are also examples of how the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, improves community outcomes. I'll just use an example from Michigan. But in Michigan, the Department of Energy was completing NEPA at a site for a potential vehicle battery manufacturing facility. Through that process, they learned of dioxin contamination in the soil. As a result of NEPA, the Department of Energy incorporated mitigation controls to minimize the exposure for workers and children at a nearby daycare facility during construction. The private sector has a role to play as well. And we know many American businesses are already working hand in hand with communities in the U.S. For example, in my native West Virginia, Clearway Energy Group has established a community I want to say it's a community benefit fund. That's it, community benefit fund that has provided roughly $180,000 in grants for projects and programs in the communities surrounding the 23 turbine wind farm. The company also established a project labor agreement to ensure that construction jobs would go to the local labor force. These steps help build support for future projects to bring more reliability to the electric grid. Still, I am a firm believer that if something's not perfect, let's make it better. I've said that a million times. If it isn't perfect, make it better. And my wife's still looking for what should go on my tombstone. And I've done a lot of work on postal issues, and I've always thought that return to sender would be pretty good. But another one would be pretty good would be, if it's not perfect, let's make it better. So we'll have, maybe we could do multiple choice or rotate from week to week, we'll see. But there's more that Congress can and must do to improve our nation's environmental review procedures and connect clean energy infrastructure to the grid. Or to paraphrase my friend, a fellow that some of us know pretty well, Hal Harvey, and this is what Hal likes to say, markets are good at addressing 90% of our problems, and it's up to those of us in government to work on the other 10%. Thank you, Hal Harvey. We know that one of these challenges is connecting clean energy to the grid. A recent study by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab found that our nation has 2 terawatts of renewable energy capacity, such as solar, such as wind, including battery storage, that are waiting to connect to the grid, To put that figure in perspective, the total capacity, listen to this, total capacity of all existing power plants in the United States is currently 1.25 terawatts. That's almost double the amount of energy capacity we have today. Unfortunately, the same study also found that only 1 in 5 transmission projects seeking to connect to the grid from 2000 to 2017 was operational by the end of 2022. I'm going to say that again. That same study also found that only 1 in 5 transmission projects seeking to connect to the grid from the year 2000 to the year 2017 was operational by the end of 2022. This report doesn't account for the clean energy investments that are in development now as a result of the federal investments passed by the last Congress. To me, I think it's clear that we are at a crossroads. Some of you are old enough to remember Yogi Berra, and was a very funny guy. He's a catcher for the New York Yankees Hall of Famer, and he said a lot of funny things. One of my favorite Yogi Berra quotes is, "When you come to the fork in the road, take it." Thank you, Yogi Berra. When you come to the fork in the road, take it. But it's clear to me that we're at a crossroads. We need to find a way to bring massive amounts of clean energy onto our grid to mitigate the climate crisis. At the same time, we must make sure that communities have a voice in the build-out of critical infrastructure. I believe that this balance is what separates us from countries like India or countries like China. As a recovering governor, some of us on this committee know what that's like. I know we can build infrastructure and create economic opportunity while also protecting the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the communities that we call home from pollution. If we're going to make lasting changes to the authorities and procedures for environmental reviews and permits, the legislation must be bipartisan. As Senator Capito has heard me say more than she wants to remember, bipartisan solutions are lasting solutions. And it turns out that's true. The legislation before us also needs support from a broad coalition of stakeholders, from industry to environmental groups, and pretty good representation here today of that population. To me, a bipartisan permitting reform package must do 3 things. I'll mention them. The first one is it must result in lower emissions, not higher emissions, across our economy, while also maintaining the fundamental protections provided by our nation's bedrock environmental statutes. That's number 1. Second, a bipartisan permitting proposal must support early and meaningful community engagement in the development of projects, especially engagement with historically disadvantaged and underserved communities. Third, the legislation must provide businesses, and particularly clean energy businesses, with certainty and predictability to help unlock economic growth and job creation across our country. I ended up coming out of the Navy, moved to Delaware, got an MBA, and went to work right away in the Delaware Division of Economic Development. I worked there about 6 months until we had elections and nobody wanted to run for state treasurer, so I ran for state treasurer at the age of 29. The 6 months or so that I spent at the Division of Economic Development, if I learned nothing else, I learned businesses like certainty and predictability. And we're not going to put that on my tombstone, but we could probably put it on a number of tombstones around the country. And a lot of folks will say, "Amen, amen" to that. Businesses do need, and that would be the third thing that we're looking for. With that, I would look forward to hearing the perspectives of each of our witnesses here with us today.